I'm going to propose 4 definitions that will help us identify what is normal and what isn't. We're not going to get a yes or a no, unfortunately. It is a somewhat gray area, but it's a more yes, it's normal than no. So there's a subject I've been meaning to talk about, which is the debate du jour, the most current debate in North America, politically speaking, regarding trans people. Where you stand on trans acceptance is strongly correlated to your political affiliation, right? If you identify as a Republican, you're probably pretty lukewarm at best towards trans people. While if you're a Democrat, or if you're even more progressive than this, then on the opposite side, you are very pro-trans right. And pretty much no matter where you stand on the question, opinions tend to be very strong, very entrenched. People hold with certainty that their position is right. However, how strongly you believe you're right and how right you are, there's no link between these two. We're very good as humans at convincing ourselves we're right, even if you're somebody that's really smart, very highly educated. We're also really good at convincing ourselves we're right for very dumb reason, even smart people. What I want to do is I kind of want you to take yourself out of your own beliefs, whether you're pro or anti-trans or less tolerant of trans. What I want us to do today is to try and see if we can logically come to the conclusion of the statement or the question, is it normal to be trans? And the word normal is a very loaded word, which is fine, it's fine. We're trying to make a moral statement. There are trans people in the world. How should we react to them? Now, myself, I am very progressive. I am very pro-trans right. However, I'm trying not to muddy the waters too much. I want I want to tell you about a definition we can use to try and identify if a behavior is normal. Now, this can be used to identify whether any behavior is normal. And I'm not saying this is the objectively superior way to establish this. It's just one way we can use. There is no objective answer to the question, is it normal to be trans? But there are arguments that I want to bring out today. Well, first of all, we could just say, according to the APA, the American Psychological Association, who publishes the DSM, being trans is not a sign of mental illness anymore. But previously, homosexuality used to be part of the DSM. That was a mental disorder. Okay, so what changed? And we could just say, it's the APA, they're the experts, and, divesting your opinion to the experts who know what they're talking about, in my opinion, that's a good move. However, let's try to go for an actual good reasoning for it. So, I prepared for you something very special, a PowerPoint presentation. How do we understand if something is normal or not? How can we say being trans is normal or it's not? What does it mean to be normal? Well, I'm going to propose 4 definitions that will help us identify what is normal and what isn't. We're also going to take a look at 2 behaviors, one which is considered completely normal and one which is considered completely abnormal. Now, if this definition holds, we should see that with all 4 of these definitions. The first one, yes, normality is reached. We're convinced it's normal according to the definition. And for the second one, we're convinced it's abnormal according to our definitions. So the first kind of normality is statistical normality. Raw numbers. How common is the behavior? If there's a behavior that's done by everyone, well, we can't really not consider that normal, right? If everyone or 95% of the human race eats meat, well, it's pretty normal to eat meat. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Mind you, there's actual statistics, what is the truth, and what is perceived. If in your life most people aren't around you are all vegans, well, you'll think it's pretty weird to eat meat. You'll think it's less normal. So perceived normality also holds a place here. It's how you may come to the conclusion if being trans is normal or not, right? If you know plenty of trans people, you're more likely to think it's normal. If you don't know any, it'll feel weird to you. Okay, that's the first one. Second, utilitarian normality. Is the behavior harmful? Let's take an example. Is it abnormal to drink alcohol? Well, depends how much you drink, okay? How much alcohol do you need to drink for it to become abnormal? Well, it's when you start blacking out, when you start developing diseases related to alcohol, that's when it stops being normal. It's when the behavior becomes harmful. Is depression normal? Well, no, because the person who is depressed feels bad. There is a harm being done to that person. Is it normal to be driving at a speed of 160 miles an hour? Oh, well, no, because you could cause harm, right? Is there potential harm being caused by the behavior? 3. Biological normality. Is the behavior in line with your biology? Is there something wrong with your biology? And when it comes to psychology, is the brain working correctly? Now, here, there's a little wiggle room, right? Like, what does it mean that there's something wrong with your biology? You could argue that homosexuality, for instance, is not biologically normal because you're supposed to reproduce, to be sexually aroused towards a member of the opposite sex, to have babies. You could make that point. However, you could also make the point that, well, you're attracted to the person of the same sex and your body is reacting according to your attraction, therefore your biology is acting normally. So there's wiggle room in that one. However, if you look at depression, well, there's something wrong with your serotonin. So it's not working normally. Do you have erectile dysfunction? Well, that's an anomaly. Your biology is supposed to allow you to be erect as a man. And fourth, moral normality. Does the behavior provoke disgust? This is the most subjective form of normality. However, it's an important one. And it might be the reason that you believe that being trans is right or wrong. If intrinsically, when you look at a trans person, you think, oh, that's weird. I don't like that. That person looks weird. Why don't you look like a man? You're a man. You're supposed to look like a man. I don't like this. You're way, way more likely to believe that the behavior is abnormal, right? It's your emotions. We are driven by our feelings, unfortunately. And mind you, this is a bit of a democratic normality. If everybody agrees that it's not wrong to be gay, being gay is fine, and I don't care if you're gay, it doesn't bother me. If everybody agrees with this statement, well, we've reached moral normality. Okay, so we'll get out of full screen, left-handedness. Left-handedness, super normal. Nobody cares, right? If somebody says, oh, I'm left-handed, you're not going to say, oh, you're weird. You're not normal. We need to fix that. Used to be the case. It used to be that it was a sign of the devil. But now we're a lot more reasonable. So, what are we going to do? First of all, we're simply going to be taking a look at all of these and try to establish, oh, is this normal? According to these 4 kinds of normality. We're going to color code it too. So, statistical normality. Is left-handedness normal? About 8 to 10% of the human population is left-handed. So, statistically, pretty normal. And again, if this whole system works, everything in the right column should be green or yellow, right? It's a good sign if everything is considered normal. Utilitarian normality. Is there harm in a person being left-handed? Well, aside from some tools being made to be more easily used by right-handed people, not really. Third, biological normality. Is there something wrong with your brain? Well, You might think maybe there is, but in actuality, the only thing that's different is when your brain gets wired, sometimes uh, the laterality of the functions just are inversed and everything else works in the brain. There's nothing wrong intrinsically in the brain, so everything works just fine if you're left handed. And finally, moral normality. Are people disgusted by seeing other people being left handed? Well, no. No disgust at all. So great. So far, the system works perfectly, right? Does is does anyone disagree that yep, statistically it's pretty common, doesn't cause any harm, the brain works just fine, and nobody's disgusted by left-handedness? Great. Left-handedness, perfectly normal behavior. Now, pedophilia. This one, yeah, nobody thinks that's normal. Nobody. Even pedophiles know that something's wrong with them. Well, if they're somewhat introspective, they know. Yeah, like the minor attracted person movement is extremely weak. It's hated by everyone, both progressives and conservatives. Most heinous crime is pedophilia. So, statistically, how normal is it? The numbers are a bit hard to find, but if we take a look at the DSM-5, the prevalence is about 3 to 5% in male at best. So if we take a look at the whole population, 1.5%. Maybe. The numbers are hard to get because, well, they don't exactly show their true colors. So it's pretty rare. Not like impossibly rare, but it's pretty rare. So we're gonna hit that one with purple. It could be more rare, but it's pretty rare. It's pretty abnormal. Okay. Utilitarian normality. Is it harmful? Yes, it's extremely harmful. If you alleviate your desires, a child gets incredibly hurt. It's one of the reasons that it's considered so heinous of a crime. It's because of the victim, who is completely innocent, is traumatized both physically and psychologically, and sometimes killed. So this one's pretty easily in the red. It's extremely abnormal, extremely harmful. Okay. Biological normality. I'm going to use the same example you could use with homosexuality. The point of sexual attraction is to make babies. Does being attracted to minors help you make babies? Absolutely not. Okay. But that's not the only function of sexual arousal. If you are sexually aroused by another man and you're a man, well, you can both enjoy yourself and have sexual relationships. So some good can come out of being gay. Great. If you're a pedophile, you can't even get into a consensual relationship with a child because children cannot consent to sexual relationship. So, is there something wrong with your biology if you're a pedophile? Yes. Very yes. And finally, easy one, moral normality. Is it disgusting in 2023? Everybody agrees that yes. As a matter of fact, today, having sexual relationships with someone that's younger is it's the most repulsed by it we've ever been, right? In antiquity, in ancient Greece, having relationships with a 13-year-old boy was seen as pretty okay, depending on when you are, and I'm making it pretty simple. It was more accepted. Now, no. So, pedophilia, according to this methodology, yep, we all agree, very abnormal. Our main course. How about transsexuality? And mind you, in my personal view, the only argument I need to push for trans right is people who want to change their genders would be better off changing their genders according to studies, and no harm is caused. I'm very utilitarian in that way. I'm pro freedom. You want to do what you want with your body, go ahead and do it. We don't allow minors to transition in a way that's irreversible, which I think is good. We allow them to transition socially, which they can come back from if they change their mind. Adults should be able to do what they want with their body. And if we don't accept trans right, if we don't allow people to transition, it causes a lot of harm to them. There's a good reason why the suicide rate amongst trans people is so high. So there's harm in not accepting trans right, and there's no harm in accepting it. And that's my personal position. But I'm not here to tell, well, I'm kind of here to tell you what my position is. I'm here so we can try to establish what is it actually normal. And I'm going to, burst the ulcer right here. We're not going to get a yes or no, unfortunately. It is a somewhat gray area, but it's a more yes, it's normal than no, in my opinion. So let's do it. And, I'm going to try to be honest and unbiased as much as I can. Statistical normality. Is it normal? Well, how common is it? And fun fact, I taught a psychology of sexuality class, and in order to construct the lesson, I looked at some textbooks, and one of the textbooks that I used was from 2011 because science doesn't change a whole lot, but when it comes to what we understand gender and sexuality to be, things have evolved in the last 13 or so years. So in this textbook, which I'm not going to put on blast right here, the author estimated, according to some studies done at the time, that the number of trans people in the US is very, very low. Less than 5,000. Now, if you know the actual number, that's laughably low. But what is actually the incidence of transsexuality? About 1.6 million in the US, which is about 0.6% of the population. Mind you, that number in percent is higher with youngsters, mostly because we've progressed toward trans rights. So logically, if we've got trans people in the US, the number should be the same for all age groups. But we can see the younger you are, the more likely you are to be trans. Some people mistakenly call this a social contagion. It's more, now that it's accepted, more people are coming out. Same thing with homosexuality, right? The same thing happened when people started to become more liberal, more accepting of homosexuality. More people were able to come out, and now we understand that there's about 3 to 4% of the population that is considered gay, and a bit more that's bi. So the actual number, it would be reasonable to assume it's around 1.5%. That's a reasonable number to have. Now, I said earlier that pedophilia was pretty rare, and that's about the number we had. So, statistically, I have to say that it's pretty rare too. And mind you, there's a lot of media representation of trans people, which personally, I don't think that's bad. One of the reasons we have more representation of trans people, it's so we get less transphobia. Because if it's seen as normal, well, people will treat it as normal. I'm gonna use an example, an old one. Remember Captain Planet? That wasn't a very good show, but the cast of characters was a diverse group of people. And that's something you saw a lot, and you still see. A diverse cast of character. That's a good thing to have. Why is it a good thing? Because if you perceive people of Asian origin, of African American origin, Caucasian people, Native American, whatever is the origin, whatever is the social identity of the person, if you perceive it as normal, ordinary, well, you'll treat it as normal and ordinary, and you're way less likely to be racist, homophobic, sexist, whatever. So that's why media representation is important. The perception is often more important than the actual number. And if you take a look at media, in my opinion, trans people are a bit overrepresented. And again, I don't think that's bad. That means we get less transphobia, which, that's good. Utilitarian normality now. Is being trans harmful? You have to take a look at studies to know, well, if someone that wants to transition, they go all the way. What happens? Are the outcomes good? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. Roughly 1% of people who transition medically regret it. And of that 1%, a good chunk regret transitioning because they suffer from transphobia, or they don't get the support they wish they had when they transition. When it comes to their mental health, psychologically, they're better in every way. Okay, sure. It's not harmful to them, but is it harmful to others? And that's an argument you hear a lot from some conservative who make bad arguments. It's, oh, but what about the children? And yeah, what about the children? If a child sees a trans person, what harm is done? And they try to come up with, oh, there's gender confusion. Uh, they don't have much. They don't have much, and they don't have any studies to back that up. Because, yeah, of course they don't. If a child sees a trans person and maybe that trans person isn't passing, what's going to happen? Well, the child's going to say, Mommy, why does that person look like that? Oh, because it's a trans woman. What's a trans woman? Oh, it's a man that later decided to be a girl. Oh, you can do that? Yes. Okay. And yeah, that's the gender confusion, like in actuality. Which is why you tend to see more argument like, yeah, they're coming and they're trying to groom your kids. Which, yeah, their definition of grooming is acknowledging that trans people exist. So, I wish I could, go and give credibility to the more conservative argument that, oh, but no, there's some kind of harm being done, but it's just not demonstrated in any way. So I'm gonna go with close to none, easy green here. Biological normality. Now, we do have something here. Your gender identity in your head, it would make sense if it fit pretty closely with your genitals and your chromosomes, right? That's your biology, of course. And when you transition, depending on what happens, you risk becoming infertile. So you lose some biological function, which maybe it's important to you, maybe it's not. Now, you can easily make the argument if you could transition and have a fully functional reproductive system, would you consider trans people more normal? If your answer is no, that wouldn't change anything, you don't care about biological normality, right? If nothing is lost, your biological normality is there's nothing wrong here. So, what do we get? We do lose some function. However, transitioning means making your body fit more with what's in your head. You're, in a way, making yourself more biologically normal because hey, what's in your head, your brain, yeah, that's part of your biology. So you could easily argue that when somebody transition, they become more biologically normal. The state of gender dysphoria, my body is not right with what's in my head, that's biologically abnormal. And if you look in the DSM, you don't get trans people. In the DSM, gender dysphoria is present. The state of unease you get when your body and your mind doesn't fit, that is considered abnormal. Therefore, if you fix that dysphoria, you make the body match the mind, you make the genitals match the brain, now you've reached a more biologically normal person. So, is it normal? Is it not? Well, you do lose some biological function by becoming potentially infertile. So it's mostly normal. You make your body fit with your brain, which is what you want to do when you transition. Gender dysphoria, I will absolutely agree. This is a biological abnormality. Transitioning is the fix to that abnormality. We're going to go with a cyan, a slightly less green. Right? We're fine with that? And finally, moral normality. Do we think trans people are weird and gross? Again, that's the democratic point of view. If everybody agrees that trans people are weird and gross, yep, it's abnormal. If everybody's cool with it, yep, it's normal. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, how accepted are trans people? And so, well, let's turn to democracy. What is people's position on trans people? Well, it's pretty clear that 10% of Americans strongly oppose trans people's right to transition. 25% don't care, and 2/3 are in favor. So from this, we can say pretty conclusively that if trans people provoke disgust in you, you're in the minority in America. So, in the context of America, most people are not disgusted. Now, mind you, this is not a clear yes or no that being trans is completely normal, right? It's still statistically rare. There is some biological malfunction sometimes, and not everybody's cool with it. We can acknowledge that. However, if you want to be honest with yourself, if you think that this definition of normality is reasonable, right? And if you agreed previously that, yep, this seems fine, and now you're like, oh, no, I no longer agree with this definition, you're not being very rational right now. We can pretty much agree that being trans is much closer to being normal than not. And as time will move forward, maybe technology will move fast enough that you'll be able to have kids no matter what, and nobody will think that it's wrong to be trans. And then, well, we'll have reached a much clearer picture of whether it's normal or not. But for now, it's looking pretty good for the people who are pro-trans right.